So what was that fanfare like in 1984? What was it that surprised you or surprised anyone else, like during your research, digging that up? The
I didn't know
microfiche.
anything about it, so it was all surprising. I wouldn't say surprising. I went in a kind of a blank slate. I had a general idea of it before I started to read about it, and then once I read about it, it was just filling in the blanks of what I didn't know, and all of it made sense to me. None of it was terribly shocking.
Yeah. Did you know the power of God Bless the USA? Like how people
Oh, of
took that to
course.
heart? Okay.
Oh, of course, of course, of course. I mean, none of that surprised me either. That was I got his quotes and a couple of pretty good accounts of it from those microfiches at the Hall of Fame and Museum, and yeah, all of it lined up perfectly for me, just in terms of what I might have expected. You know, the I knew the Judds were a big deal at the time. I had read what is his name? Bruce Feiler's great book, Dreaming Out Loud, which is his book about the 90s country boom. And the focuses of that book are Garth Brooks, Wade Hayes, who was a newcomer at the time, and Wynonna Judd, who had just gone solo. So there was a lot of really interesting stuff about the Judds in there. And you know, Naomi, the mother, had written a memoir. So there was a lot there. I especially, I remember somebody who didn't like the book or didn't like parts of the book was like, why are we reading about the Judds? It's like, because they were the biggest thing in country music at the time. Why wouldn't you be reading about the Judds?
The other song that I love is the Willie Nelson, Julio.
To All the Girls?
Yeah, To All the Girls I've Loved Before. I mean, what is, I mean, I still get a kick out of it. I could still listen to it. It still cracks me up, but
it's great kitsch.
Yeah.
It's great kitsch. I mean, it's knowing. Willie is a knowing guy, you know. Willie is as full of kitsch as anybody. That I had good fun writing that section, the Willie section, because, you know, I love Willie Nelson, but I don't deify him. Or deify him. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but yeah, Willie Nelson has become so sacrosanct that it was great fun to poke holes in him, and lovingly. I wasn't like fuck Willie Nelson, not at all. It was just like, come on, this is the guy who is making more money than everybody else in his field playing Vegas, and yet at the same time, nobody doubts his regular guy cred. And, you know, that's fascinating unto itself, but it's also a little not suspicious, but it's funny. It's sort of like, well, you're fooling everybody.
Go ahead. Just the whole concept of fanfare and the whole country music, that world, it must have been very eye-opening, and knowing how passionate the fans are. And
yeah, I have not, again, when I say I don't know very much about country, it means I don't know anything about country compared to, say, John Freeman or Julie Height. I know nothing compared to them. David Cantwell on my panel, I'm positive David Cantwell knows more about country than everybody else on that panel combined, because he's David Cantwell, not because anybody else is ignorant. So I knew I had to step up and be really accurate and really like thoughtful about this. And I try to do that as a rule with everything. But with that especially, it was like, you have to be on your game. So what I'm taking too long to say is that I did have a very good idea of what the country world was like. And I have a good idea of what the country world is like overall. But I also knew that, so I had some idea of it, but yeah, reading about fanfare itself, reading about the closeness of the fans to the audience. In fact, the reason I mentioned the Bruce Feiler book is because that's where I learned about fanfare years ago when I read that book. I think that book was published in 1998. And so that was the first I'd ever heard of fanfare, which later, I may have this wrong, but fanfare got like sort of absorbed into a bigger Nashville annual, festival tradition sort of thing. Yeah. It isn't fanfare anymore. It's part of something else. So, but that, when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, because the story that he tells in that book is about Garth Brooks staying at fanfare until 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. to sign the very last autograph. Yeah. And that's really typical in country music, which is very much about normalcy and regular personness and people relating to each other on a human level as opposed to a superstar fan level.
Yeah.
So it made sense to me when I was reading about the comedian Jerry Clower, like giving something away for auction, and it was a chainsaw. Willie giving away one of his bandanas. Loretta Lynn founding the thing in the early 70s because she was so close to her fan club, because she wanted to do something for her fan club and everybody else's fan club. Loretta Lynn was the big mover behind that thing.